What if every tank, every plane, every bullet of World War II was paid for with money that never actually existed? We're taught the story of the war through its battles and heroes, good versus evil. But behind the smoke and the rubble, a completely different, more terrifying war was being fought. A silent war, a financial war. This is the story your history teacher never knew, and your textbook deliberately left out. And the most crucial alliance? Not between nations, but between governments, and the bankers who invented a phantom economy. An economy that didn't just fund the world's destruction, but then built our modern world on a mountain of debt. A mountain that still looms over your bank account, your paycheck, your future. So let me ask you the real question. Is the financial world you live in today just the final, lasting victory of those wartime bankers? The late 1930s. The world is hurtling towards catastrophe. Germany is a terrifying industrial war machine. But Britain? France? The Allies? They had a secret problem, one far more dangerous than any spy could uncover. They were bankrupt. The public saw strength, factories roaring, ships launching, flags waving. But beneath that noise was silence, the sound of empty vaults. The truth was a terrifying financial reality. Hollow treasuries, maxed-out credit, and a future already sold. And the United States, the world's only economic powerhouse, wanted no part of another European bloodbath. So, you are a leader. Your back is against the wall. How do you fight a war for survival when you're already bankrupt? Where do you find the trillions, in today's money, to pay for it? Without a miracle, the choice was surrender or annihilation. This was the secret panic at the highest levels of power, and the solution they devised was unthinkable. It meant turning every citizen into a soldier, not with guns, but with their wallets. A financial conscription that demanded total sacrifice, and invented money that challenged reality itself. And what they created wouldn't just pay for a war. It would rewrite the meaning of money itself. So where did the money come from? The first weapon of World War II wasn't built in a factory. It was planted in the public's mind. The funding came not from vaults or bankers, but from your pocket, your savings jar, your child's piggy bank. A scheme so brilliant and so unsettling that it turned belief itself into currency. It came from the patriotic savings of ordinary citizens in the largest public fundraising campaign in history, the war bond. But this wasn't finance. This was psychological warfare on their own population. The government wasn't asking for money. They were engineering consent. They weaponized your patriotism. Propaganda posters didn't talk about interest rates. They showed your children staring at you, asking, "Daddy, what did you do?" They manufactured shame. They sold glory. They made not buying a bond feel like an act of treason. Your personal savings, the money for your family's future, was conscripted. It became the first line of national defense. Now, think today. In a world of influencers and social media algorithms, what forces are subtly guiding your financial decisions? Are you investing your money, or are you being psychologically persuaded to fund someone else's war? Because the terrifying truth is this. The modern playbook for mass financial persuasion was written in the wartime treasuries of World War II. But war bonds were just the illusion, the surface story. Behind the posters and slogans, something far larger was happening. Because the real funding of World War II didn't come from the people's savings. It came from financial magic. The real money, the unimaginable sums needed for total war, didn't exist. It had to be conjured. Governments performed a kind of financial alchemy, turning the base metal of future promises into the gold of present-day weapons. And this is where we step into the shadows, the part of the war that was never filmed. With their public credit exhausted, governments turned to their central banks and a hidden network of private financiers. And they began to do something that should send a chill down your spine. They started turning debt itself into money. Not gold, not labor, just promises, multiplied, traded, and believed. In simple, terrifying terms, they printed money. But it wasn't paper they were printing. It was belief. It was like writing themselves a check from an empty account, and somehow convincing the entire world to cash it. The U.S. Lend-Lease Act was the ultimate expression of this. It wasn't a sale. It was a financial sleight of hand, shipping billions in arms to Britain on an IOU. The entire Allied economy became a monumental gamble. a bet that they could win the war before the entire financial house of cards came crashing down. This was the bankers' war, fought not with tanks, but with typewriters. A handful of men in sealed rooms, shifting imaginary numbers across ledgers, and deciding the fate of millions. So here's the question that should haunt you. If the good war was fought with created credit and imagined money, then what is the dollar, the pound, the euro in your pocket really built on today? Because maybe the illusion never ended. So the Allies had mastered financial alchemy. But what was to stop the Axis from learning the same tricks? Nothing. So the Allies did the only logical thing. They launched a preemptive war to make sure they never could. This was the invisible battlefield, a global conflict fought not with bullets, but with bank ledgers, frozen assets, and economic sabotage. And it started long before the fighting. Before a single American soldier landed in Europe, the United States and Great Britain had launched a devastating financial blitzkrieg. They identified and froze every single enemy asset in their banks. Overnight, the Axis powers found themselves locked out of the global financial system. Imagine it. A German agent in a neutral port, with a briefcase full of cash, unable to buy the oil or rubber his nation desperately needed. The money was useless. They didn't stop there. They weaponized the entire international banking system, tracking money flows and blacklisting any neutral company that dared to do business with the enemy. Sounds distant? It shouldn't. The same levers, asset freezes, blacklist systems exist today, just with faster networks and bigger stakes. Think about that power. The ability to financially quarantine an entire nation, to strangle its war machine by cutting off its economic oxygen. While the world watched the physical battlefields, this silent financial war was already deciding the outcome. It was ruthless, it was global, and in many ways, it was just as decisive. Which forces you to ask, in our globally connected economy, where your pension and investments are tied to international markets, how vulnerable are you? Because the next global war might not start with missiles. It might start when your bank app just stops working. The war ended. The guns fell silent. But the financial machine, the one that conjured money and strangled economies, did not get dismantled. It was too powerful, too useful. It simply found a new enemy, peacetime itself. It evolved. And in 1944, while the war still raged, the very same architects of the Allied financial war machine gathered at Bretton Woods. This wasn't a peace conference, it was a victory lap. There they didn't just plan for peace. They designed the modern global economic order in their own image. They made the US dollar, the very currency printed into existence for war, the bedrock of the entire world's economy. The IMF, the World Bank, these were born from the ashes. The system of massive government debt, central bank intervention, and global capital flows that we take for granted today wasn't born in stability. It was forged in the emergency of total war. The bankers' war never ended. The battlefield just changed. From the ruins of nations to the balance of your bank account. It became the silent, unquestioned system that now governs your mortgage, your retirement, the very value of the money in your pocket. The secret economy went from funding the world's destruction to building our entire financial reality. So the next time you look at your paycheck, your investment portfolio, or the interest rate on your loan, ask yourself one final, haunting question. Am I a player in this economy, or just living in the world that those wartime bankers built for me?